Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the At the Pylon podcast. Alongside Chandler Betts, my name is Nick Antonakas. Chandler, how are you doing this afternoon?
We are doing well because the Celtics are so back.
They are back. And Chandler, I hate to jump the gun. I said this last episode, but the Patriots might be back too. It all depends on their game this weekend against the Miami Dolphins. Chandler and I got a full preview set for everybody on this episode. So let's not waste any time, Chandler. Let's dive right into it. So before we kind of dive into the storyline of the game this weekend, there were a few key releases by the Pats on Tuesday. The first of which is the more surprising of the two. Malik Cunningham, who was just most recently signed to a 3-year entry-level contract on the 53-man roster. He got cut. He ended up re-signing with the practice squad after he cleared waivers. Mike Reese tweeted out, he said, quote, "The back and forth with Cunningham is reflective of teams' injury-driven management of the roster/practice squad." So, Chandler, do you really think that this was just in the case of, oh, we got injuries, like you're going back? Or do you think that whole sign Malik was to put some pressure on Mac Jones?
I think that it really is just the injuries. I don't think that there is a plan for Malik Cunningham right now, as he he immediately got removed as the backup last week, which I found very interesting. I don't exactly know what's going on there. Of course, we're not there. Wish we could be, because then we could figure it out. I'd like to see him as the backup, but that's not the case. Having him float between the practice squad, there was him, two other players I know we'll talk about are Trey Flowers and Jalen Reagor, both of them who have been on the 53 for a game, released, and then signed right back. Reagor even had a catch last week and was just quickly released, brought back again, elevated. He was elevated again to the 53 today.
Yeah, well, now he has to be signed to the 53 because this is his third time. Third stint getting called up, so he's signed.
Yep, there we go. And it's better than some other guys we have, which that's not good to say, but it's true. I don't think this has anything to do with pressuring Mac. I think there is at least enough confidence in Mac to roll for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I agree with you there, Chandler. But part of me, at least in the back of my mind, was confused as to why are we throwing Bailey Zappi in the backup spot when he has proven throughout the preseason and the regular season that he sucks, and demoting Malik Cunningham. That's why part of me is thinking like, all right, signing this guy with rookie potential to a 3-year entry-level deal at Mac's worst point of the season might have been to just put like a little bit of an oomph behind him. Like, all right, dude, like, just so you know, like, we know Zappi sucks. You've seen that. We've seen that. But this guy, Malik, he's coming up. You don't know what he looks like. He played great in the preseason. He's coming for your job if you don't pull things together. And after Mac has his best game of the season against the Bills, we see Cunningham get cut back to the practice squad, at least. I mean, it's kind of sad for me, but, you know, as long as he's sticking with the team, I'm fine with it. As much as I'd rather have Zappi out the door and Cunningham in at that backup spot. But regardless, like you said, Chandler, we don't know. We're not there. But one thing we do know is this other release that happened on Tuesday. Trey Flowers, longtime former Patriot who was making a return stint with the team, he was cut from the squad. It seemed like he was going to work his way back off the injury report to actually play for the squad in the next week or two, but this cut kind of changes plans. What do you think, Chandler?
I think that it was a chance of seeing if we can continue the cycle, as we've talked about before, of Patriots players. Let's go.
I was killing I was killing a fly.
Yeah. Come on. Yeah.
Trey Flowers.
Gosh. If the Patriots can bring back players that have played well for us, not played well elsewhere, come back, played well again for us, it was worth the risk. Clearly, there's something wrong, be that he's more injured than we thought originally, or he's washed because of the injury, or he's washed, period. I think this is pretty much the end of the next stint of Trey Flowers, most likely.
Yeah, it's too bad. I wanted to see the guy come back with the squad, Chandler. I was really looking forward to that signing when it happened in the offseason, possibly a resurgence in that more depth role whenever he was on the field. But along with Trey Flowers' potential injuries, there are a lot of other IR participants on this week's practice report. The only one to not participate at all was defensive lineman Keon White. He was out with a concussion. And then the limited participation list continues to grow each week. We got Calvin Anderson out with an illness, Barmore out with a knee, Trent Brown with an ankle/knee injury, David Gottschalk ankle, Hunter Henry ankle, Jonathan Jones knee, Ty Montgomery knee, Cole Strange knee, Josh Uche ankle and toe, Sean Wade shoulder, and Dietrich Wise Jr. with a shoulder injury. So going into this week, Chandler, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, the offensive line injuries have been a struggle for this team, especially when we have to see guys like Verdarian Lowe enter the contest. But before we look at this week's game, Chandler, why don't we take a dive into the future, your long-awaited
Let's do
rookie
it.
preview. Chandler, who do you got for us this week? Remind the viewers.
So pumped for this one. This is Marvin Harrison Jr., son of Hall of Fame wide receiver Marvin Harrison Sr., from the Colts with the Peyton Manning era. While having a legacy NFL family definitely doesn't guarantee success, I think it's a really big deal because you have the roadmap to see what it takes to be great, and especially when you have a great father. He was one of the best wide receivers, obviously the Hall of Fame, was one of the best wide receivers of his generation, one of his best wide receivers of us growing up.
Mm-hmm.
He's 6'4", 205. He is a large body. That's a comparable body to a DK Metcalf, for reference. He's huge. Other wide receivers who are good contested catches like he is, Jamar Chase is only 6 foot. So he is going to be terrifying. Imagine him lining up next to 5'9" Sean Wade. That would be so not fun for Sean Wade. Be really fun to watch. Talking a little bit about him, he played sparingly his freshman year. He was a 5-star prospect before all of that. One of the best wide receiver prospects in high school. He was a 5-star, comes in, doesn't play a lot his freshman year until the Rose Bowl. Rose Bowl is the last game of the season for them at the season. They play Utah, really good defense, 3 touchdowns, super casually, his coming out party. He takes over as the wide receiver 1 the next year because Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave are both drafted, and Jackson Smith-Njigba was injured for that entire season. Little side note, all 3 of them were top 20 picks in their draft. So that was a loaded wide receiver room for him to learn around. And immediately when he comes out as a sophomore, catches 77 balls for 1,263 yards. And of his 13 games, 7 of them were over 100 yards. And the key for that, in my eyes, 3 of those 7 games were the 3 biggest games of the season that year, against Penn State, Michigan, and that crazy Georgia game on New Year's Eve when it was a 42-41 loss. And that Georgia defense was all-time, one of the best defenses all time. They won the national championship. It was like 70-7 or something. And 42-41, Marvin Harrison Jr. had 160-plus yards. He was an absolute animal. Wow. And he's getting him coverage, too. He's getting shaded. He's getting doubled. He's incredible. There's nothing that he can't do. There's some things that he can work on, but there's really nothing that he can't do. He's done it this season as well after having lost C.J. Stroud, who was his quarterback last year. He now has Kyle McCord, who's received a lot of flack for not being able to really operate this offense as well. Mm-hmm. But that hasn't seen a decrease in Marvin Harrison Jr.'s stats, as he has gone for over 100 yards in 5 of the 7 games this season.
Wow.
He's a generational talent. He's got a huge frame. In terms of that top tier of wide receivers, he would immediately slot in as the biggest of them. He has big frame, elite production, as I've talked about, generational hands. He has some of the best hands I've ever seen. There are stories about people coming into the Ohio State locker room and the Ohio State training facility, and they will always see him on the jugs machine. He has his own jugs machine. He was just talking about that tracks him for certain routes. I've never seen it before. I'm curious if there are any videos of it. But he puts in a route and says, I'm going to run this, throw it here, so he can work on his releases, his routes. His footwork's incredible for someone who's 6'4", and he has great speed. Now, there's conflicting reports on this in a way, because he says that he will run at the combine a high 4.3, which of course is absurd. There were only 4 people that ran below a 4.4 in the last combine. But there are some people saying that he's going to run a 4.5, which even that at that size is still incredible.
Yeah.
he's being compared to Calvin Johnson. So that's why people are saying, oh, his speed is lackluster. It's not. You see him, he's so good at go routes. He can cut on a dime. Like I've been talking about, his routes are incredible. And one of the key things for me, he's really willing to block. He talked about in an interview with Pat McAfee when they were at Ohio State for game day.
Mm-hmm.
Talked a lot about how there was one play he highlighted from one of his earlier games where he missed a block and he was pissed. He was like, that's what I have to work on. That is the thing that I have to develop right now. That's what I'm working on to get better. And that just shows so much of a complete player that it makes sense that he is the general consensus number 2 overall prospect in this upcoming draft. He's incredible. And if I were to, you have something, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, it seems like he's a Pat's type of mold of player. You said he was expected to go number 2 overall. 3 questions to bang through really fast. Your pro comparison, where you think he's actually going to go in the draft, and the odds that the Patriots land him.
Okay, so I'll do the pro comparison last.
Okay, sure.
Where I think he'll actually go, I think that he will go number 2 as long as number 2 doesn't need a quarterback. He will be the first non-quarterback off the board. And I think that's a pretty safe bet right now. He's incredible. He is arguably the greatest wide receiver prospect of all time. There's a certain echelon of players. Those players are it's Jamar Chase, it's AJ Green, it's Julio Jones, it's Calvin Johnson, it's Randy Moss. That is the level of that kind of draft prospect, and you can officially put Marvin Harrison Jr. up with them, and that is rarefied air, my friend. So I think he's going to be the number 1 non-quarterback taken that draft, and the odds I think the Patriots get him, I would say 30%, because it's possible that we're that bad, but at the same time, if we're that bad, I think there's a chance that we go one more further and trade up to get a quarterback, because if we're that bad, if we're in the position to get the first non-quarterback, we should be getting a quarterback. So
yeah,
that's my thought about 30%, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, give or take. As for comparison, just like last week when everybody was comparing Michael Penix to Tua and other common comparisons, I want to do something different. The comparison that he is getting all the time is AJ Green. And AJ Green had a great NFL career, but in terms of as a draft prospect, like I said, he's one of the 5 best draft prospects of all time.
Mm-hmm.
So that, or for the wide receiver position. So that is an incredible comparison. I will make one of an active player right now, and I will say Mike Evans. Mike Evans is 6'5". Mike Evans is a great receiver. He's a great, huge body, jump ball receiver, great production, has improved a lot as a route runner. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. comes out as a much better prospect, of course, because Mike Evans went 7th in his draft, and we're going to see Marvin Harrison, assuming, go before that. He's got incredible speed. I think that he's a lot closer to Calvin Johnson than people are giving him credit for, but that is just an absurd. I've seen Randy Moss. I will never compare someone to that.
Wow.
Randy Moss is the best wide receiver of all time.
That's
Sorry,
crazy.
my Jerry Rice people, but I will never make that comparison. I will never go that far. But I think that Mike Evans, he's a faster Mike Evans. Mike Evans ran a 4.5. I think Marvin Harrison will run a 4.42 is my guess.
Wow.
He's a faster Mike Evans, and that is a immediate that is the production we are seeing out of Jamar Chase, maybe plus 100 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, well, that would definitely be a Patriots player that I'd
be
to
very
see
happy
in the future.
Yeah, I'd be pretty pumped.
But to say the least, we might be, although it's possible that we are that bad, this game against the Dolphins on Sunday could turn that entire ship around, Chandler. If we get the win this Sunday, this is a completely different Patriots team. So let's start looking into this game a little bit. First off, Dolphins, they have some injuries right now, Chandler. Tyreek Hill, their superstar wide receiver, did not practice and participate in practice yesterday on Wednesday. And it was implied by quarterback Tua Tagovailoa in post-practice reports. Tua said, quote, "We'll see him down the line," which is implying that we might see Hill sit out for a good amount of time, which includes this upcoming game against the Patriots on Sunday. On top of that, Raheem Mostert down with an ankle injury. He didn't participate yesterday either. Now, when we look back to the Patriots game against the Dolphins in week 2 of the NFL season, Mostert was the real superstar for Miami. He had 18 carries, 121 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He popped off. Tyreek Hill, on the other hand, we contained pretty well. Only 5 receptions for 40 yards, which for Tyreek is extremely low considering his production throughout this season. But he also had a receiving touchdown. Now, take those 2 players away, Chandler, and we have a completely different Dolphins team that the Pats are matched up in against Miami. But what's your take? If these guys sit out, how brutal is that for the Miami Dolphins?
Oh, well, it's killer, especially with Devin Achan also being on the IR right now.
Mm-hmm.
And Jalen Waddle having gone out 2 games ago. He did play in the last game, I believe. But still, I'm sure nursing a small ankle injury. This is a banged up offense. And a really interesting stat that I found about them is as much praise as I have given them, and I will continue to give them as their offense, their wins this year have all come against teams with 2 or fewer wins, a combined record of 8-25, all the teams that they've beaten. Their point differential in their wins plus 95. A lot of that is from that 50-point win against the Broncos, of course, but their loss differential is minus 42. This team maybe isn't as good as we're saying they are. I think they still are, but a team that is semi-questionable right now, along with a slew of injuries, puts them in about as good of a position as we can face them. However, we are also a team with 2 or fewer wins. We're not very good.
Yeah.
So we'll see how this goes. Those wins have come in key situations for us scheduling wise. But I think that if there has ever been a chance to beat this Dolphins team this year, this is probably the best week to have them.
That's a great point you make there, Chandler. And considering the last time we played the Dolphins, at least I thought it was a close contest. You thought it was a little bit closer on paper than the scoreboard actually said. I was very happy with the way that the Pats played in week 2 against Miami. I really thought we were on the upstream. Recent games following that kind of proved the opposite until now when we're faced with our biggest win of the season against Buffalo last week. But since Miami's hot 3-0 start, Chandler, like you said, they've been a little bit of a different team. They're 2-2. They obviously had huge wins against the Giants and the Panthers. Both teams aren't very good on paper. They killed them. Now, Buffalo, they lost pretty bad against Buffalo. And obviously last week, they lost pretty bad against the Philadelphia Eagles. So along with these injuries and their recent performance, it's definitely fair to say that Miami is being questioned a little bit right now if they're as solid as they seem. And especially considering how close the game was last time, which I'll continue to highlight, I think the Patriots have a real shot in this one. Do you kind of feel the same way, or what kind of boat are you on following New England's previous game against Miami? Do you think it was just a fluke on the scoreboard, or?
I talking about the New England game against Miami earlier in the year.
Yeah, week 2. Like,
Yeah, just to
how do you think that'll play into that? Yeah.
Sure, yeah, just to clarify, I think that we were the game itself was a lot more of a blowout than it actually was on the score. I think that this game is probably going to be more reflective of the general expectation and the gap of skill, both in a currently in a play calling sense and a large gap in a talent sense of this game. I don't expect it to be especially close, but then again, we also both didn't think that the Patriots had a chance to beat the Bills last week. Anything is possible, I will say, every time. It's any given Sunday, but I am still very much so a believer of this Miami team. I'm not especially worried for them. I still think that they are currently my favorites to face the Chiefs in the AFC Championship, depending on how the scheduling goes, of course, for that. But I think that this is a really great team. While this is the best chance that we're going to have with them this year, I don't know if it's going to be enough.
That's fair. And I think you're right in crediting Miami and how well they've played so far this season. We can't take away from those first 3 games. They looked magnificent. In their 2 wins following, they looked magnificent. Sure, you have a bad game against Buffalo and then you lose to Philadelphia. Philadelphia is still one of the best teams in this league, so you can't really contribute that much to that. But in terms of the situation, you're right, Chandler. The Patriots have a real chance to win this week. And part of which my believing in that is based off how well they performed in the red zone against Miami in week 2. That was a focal point for me, the way that they performed on defense in the red zone, holding Miami within that. I believe, what do they have? 24 points.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
24-17.
Yeah. So holding them to 24 points was in a big part to their red zone defense. And on offense, we see, although since that game, it was a pretty rare occurrence that we were making it down to the red zone. We currently rank number 4 in the NFL in terms of red zone offense. Obviously, Miami is number 1. So considering how effective we were on the defensive side of the ball in the red zone against Miami, currently we rank 8 in the NFL in terms of red zone defense, while Miami, let's see where they are here. They are all the way. What's great? I can't find them. 27.
In red zone
Miami,
defense or
red
red zone
zone
offense?
defense. Red zone defense, Miami is. So something important to weigh in terms of the Patriots' success rate on offense and defense in the red zone matched up against this Miami team. I think that's something to note. But on top of that, this game is extremely important for the division standings, Chandler.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, the Pats have the best division record right now in the AFC East. They're currently 2-1 versus division opponents, beating the Bills last week.
Elsewhere.
Yeah, 0-4 elsewhere. But in terms of a division opponent and a division record, the Pats have been on a roll. How important, I mean, obviously we've talked about the magnitude that this game has, but in terms of divisional standings, how important is this game for both of these teams involved?
I think it's really important. To cap off the red zone point, since we've played Miami, now I don't believe either of these two people are especially good, but they have made 2 key signings and key trades. One being Robbie Anderson, whatever he wants to go by today. He's 6'3", he's a wide receiver, he's a good big body threat in the red zone. And the other one, losing never heard of her, Chase Claypool, is now a Miami Dolphin. Interesting stat about him, about how each team, once he leaves, they get a lot better, and once he joins, they get a lot worse. Steelers, I believe, I'm going to go off the top of my head, Steelers are 11-4 since he left.
That's ridiculous.
The Dolphins haven't won since he got there, and the Bears are now 1-0 after being 0-13 with him. Funny, obviously, coincidence, maybe, probably. But he's not especially good, but he is big. He was once called Maple Megatron. You throw him the ball in the red zone on a goal line fade, he'll probably catch it over some bum that we have. But as for the actual game in the division, yeah, this is key. If we can go 3-3 in the division, we might end up at 3-14, but that's not a terrible season. Obviously, we wouldn't end up at 3-14 if we go 3-3 in the division. But 3 wins in the division is a really big deal, especially when our division is so strong. I would have, if we can split with a great Dolphins team, that would be huge. Yeah. And for Miami, it's also really big because if they lose a game to us, that is 5-alarm panic bells for them for the rest of their season, because they're expecting to be up in the upper echelons right now, and we very much so are not that. This should be a game that they have to handle well. Who do they have next week?
That's obviously a good question, but as you look that up, look at the Bills. They've hit the panic button. Everybody's back on the train of, is the Bills Super Bowl window over, ever since they lost to us last week. Ooh. So very much on the boat of, this is an important game for Miami as well as New England. In terms of the Patriots, if they win this game, you and I have both said it, their season is completely turned around. We will cash into the fact that they're back if they can win this game against Miami. Because
who they have next week?
Let's hear it.
Miami has in Germany. I forgot about this. They have the Chiefs.
Oh,
so
wow.
I don't think that anybody is ever going to look past the Patriots as long as Bill Belichick is here. But if there was a time to look past the team and accidentally lose, I don't know.
It would be now.
This might be the time.
With travel constraints and the reigning Super Bowl champs next week, you don't want to lose yourself in focusing on them too much. But regardless, this is an important game. I will not say it's the most important game of the season, because we remember the last time that happened.
It's just a normal game. This is a normal game.
Just a regular game, week 8. It means nothing to me. But let's go into our keys, Chandler. Why don't you start us off? What are your 3 keys for the Pats to get the win this week?
All right. So my 3 keys. My first one is we have to play at our tempo. They are such a fast team. Even with injuries, they're going to be so fast. Their backups are fast. Their third stringers are fast. They're a great team, really well constructed. We need to slow them down, play physical. Don't let them get out the gates. Next up, I think even with the injuries, I think it's going to have to be a shootout. I don't think we're going to be able to keep them to 24 again. I think they're going to be at least at 28, maybe more than that, probably at least 4 touchdowns. It's going to be a tough performance. We're going to need a lot of offensive production. I think it's going to have to be a shootout if we want to win this game. Third, pressure Tua. Try your best to not let it be a shootout, because if you can get Tua on the ground, that's a great sign. We've seen that he hasn't really been pressured all that much in his wins this year, and in his losses, he's been under duress. Just that's by nature of having to hold on to the ball more. If we can get him down, I know he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu now, and he knows how to fall. He did that over the offseason.
Yep.
But make him scared. I think I said this last time we played him. If we can get him in his own head, he's prone to make a mistake at least one a game. He'll give us one if we can make him give us one.
Those are great keys, Chandler. And I think a point that I'll say about both of our keys this week is that we have real ones, because last week was very much we're losing, I don't care. So thank you, New England, for maybe giving us some hope. Yes, I was waiting for that. Thank God you brought it back.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, that's our clinch for the week. Also by not saying that this is the biggest game of the season, but into my keys.
Not what? Yeah, it's just no game.
Normal game. My keys for this very normal game. First off, red zone defense. I talked about how important it was for New England in week 2 and how much I praised New England in week 2 for their red zone defense against Miami. They really showed up, and it really paid off for them in most aspects of the game. If you can hold Miami and force them to kick more field goals, I should say, because obviously this is a dynamic team with dynamic playmakers. They're going to make big plays down the field. So stop them when it matters the most, which is inside the 20-yard line. So that's my first key. Even if Hill sits out, I should say, they're still a dynamic team. Jalen Waddle's not a guy that you want to send stretching down the field. Second off, Douglas and Booty. Get those guys in there at wide receiver 2 and 3. Bourne is deserving of wide receiver 1 right now, but anybody below him that are not these 2 rookies, I would be more than happy to send them away before the trade deadline. Juju, goodbye. Parker, goodbye. I'm just done with these guys. They're too slow. They're injury prone. Parker's cocky. I'm done with dealing with them. Give the opportunity to our more dynamic and obviously more effective players, which Pop Douglas has proven throughout this season, and Booty, I guess, would be proving if he was actually in the game. Throw him in, Bill. If we need him, now's the time, because this is not the most important game of the season. You got to get Booty in there.
Oh, let's go.
What was that?
Are we going to win?
That's crazy. I don't know how I did that. Maybe I'll do this again. Great. Anyway, my last key. Wow. Now you got the celebration.
I thought I had it.
Oh, jeez. Well, that's a sign from above. Start Booty, please. Third and final key. It's a very simple one. Do not put Vidarian Lowe into this game. We saw last week, after we started Uwenu at right tackle, things were going great. Mac Jones was getting time to throw. We shift Lowe in for maybe a drive, I remember him being in, because Uwenu went out at one point. Things just went completely wrong. Everything turned on its head. We were getting penalties on the offensive line. This dude, I don't know if he's cursed or he just sucks, because he cannot be in this game.
The second one.
It's probably both, because our whole offensive line just corrupts as soon as this guy enters the game. Do not put him back in by any circumstance. I pray to God that our offensive linemen are all healthy so we never have to see this guy in a game again. But Chandler, with that, let's dive into score predictions. Who do you got, Pats or Dolphins?
All right. So going into the last game, we had Christian Gonzalez and Miles Bryant, and Marcus Jones. We don't have either of them right now. I have a 38-17 loss. Miami Dolphins are going to win 38-17.
That's fair. I mean, I was a little bit shocked when I saw that high score, but one thing that I've made very important throughout these past couple weeks is that I'm not picking the Patriots again until they can prove me wrong and win. They did that last
Well,
week. They beat Buffalo. So with that in mind,
oh
and
my
with that the
gosh.
team has been
Oh my
going,
gosh.
I'm going to pick the Pats.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
27-24 New
Oh,
England.
what a game.
It's going to be close. We're not,
Yeah.
like I said last episode on Monday in our post-game reaction episode. If you haven't already watched it, go check it out. This game is not going to be won by New England unless we play a great game. Miami's not going to mess up enough where you can just steamroll over them because of their own mistakes. You're going to have to step up to the plate and play like you did last week. All that being said, this season does not matter unless if you play consistently the way that you played last week. That's what we were saying week 1 against the Eagles, then week 2 against the Dolphins. It doesn't matter how you've played in the past unless if you can continue to play that way throughout the rest of the season. So with that in mind, I'm going to give the Pats the benefit of the doubt, and they get the win 27-24, and potentially we can see their season turn around. But if
Jeepers.
not, Chandler, we'll see your paper bag next week. That'll be
Oh
good.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Hopefully the Pats suit up in silver because that was a great sign for them. But
Yes.
if not, it still will be an enjoyable game regardless. Hopefully enjoyable enough if the Patriots get a win. So enjoy it, everybody. We'll see you next Monday for our post-game reaction episode. You definitely won't want to miss that following this extremely important game. So make sure to tune in next Monday for that post-game reaction episode. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching. Alongside Chandler Betts, my name is Nick Antonakis. We'll see you guys next week.